Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the quantum resonance chamber, feeling the familiar tingle of exotic matter coursing through the containment field. The portal hummed with barely restrained energy, its surface rippling like liquid mercury shot through with veins of pure light. After 15 years of development, humanity's greatest achievement still took her breath away. "Final systems check complete," announced her chief engineer, Marcus Chen, his voice tight with the same mixture of excitement and terror that gripped them all. "Portal stability at 97%. Target coordinates locked on Kepler 442c." Elena nodded, watching the readouts cascade across her neural interface. Kepler 442c, or Zyre, as the initial probe data had designated it, represented humanity's 43rd colonial target. What made this world special wasn't its Earth-like atmosphere or abundant water, though it possessed both. What made Zyre extraordinary were the crystalline formations that covered 60% of its surface, structures that defied every known law of geology and physics. "Commander Reeves, is your team ready?" Elena called to the expedition leader, a compact woman whose cybernetic eye gleamed with data feeds. Sarah Reeves checked her equipment one final time. Her expedition consisted of 12 specialists, xenogeologists, physicists, linguists, and a small security detail led by Lieutenant Torres. They would be the first humans to set foot on Zyre, to unlock the secrets of a world that had already revolutionized their understanding of crystal formation and energy resonance. "We're ready, Dr. Vasquez," Reeves replied. "Portal duration: 72 hours minimum. The quantum field generators can maintain the connection for up to a week if needed, but—" Elena hesitated. Every portal opening required enormous energy, and the longer the connection remained active, the greater the risk of dimensional instability. They'd learned that lesson the hard way during the Proxima Centauri incident. "Understood. We'll make it count." The portal iris dilated, revealing not the familiar blue-white glow of near-space translation, but something unprecedented, a cascade of prismatic light that seemed to bend reality itself. Through the opening, they could see Zyre's surface, vast crystal spires that caught and refracted the light of twin suns, creating aurora-like patterns that danced across a lavender sky. "Gravity reads nominal," Chen reported. "Atmosphere confirmed breathable. Temperature 22 Celsius, all green across the board." Reeves stepped forward, her team falling in behind her. Elena watched as humanity took its first step onto a world that would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. But as the expedition vanished into that prismatic light, none of them noticed the subtle wrongness in the quantum readings. The way the exotic matter seemed to respond to something beyond their instrument's ability to detect, something that was already aware of their presence. The first thing Commander Reeves noticed about Zyre wasn't the impossible beauty of the crystal formations, or the way 3 moons hung like jewels against the lavender sky. It was the sound. The crystals sang, not the random pinging of thermal expansion or seismic settling, but actual harmonic resonance, complex melodies that seemed to shift and respond to their presence. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their xenogeologist, was already kneeling beside the nearest formation, her instruments registering readings that made no sense. "Commander, you need to see this," Tanaka called, her voice tight with excitement. "These aren't crystals, not exactly. The molecular structure is organic. No, that's not right either. It's like they exist in multiple states simultaneously." Reeves crouched beside her, studying the formation. It rose from the purple-tinted ground in a perfect spiral, 30 meters tall and absolutely transparent, except for the veins of light that pulsed through its core like a heartbeat. When she reached out to touch it, the singing intensified, harmonizing with itself in ways that made her teeth ache. "Lieutenant Torres," she called to her security chief. "Perimeter sweep. Dr. Kim, start your atmospheric analysis. I want to know if we're dealing with some kind of aerial biotoxin causing hallucinations." But Dr. May Kim's readings came back clean. The air was not only breathable but surprisingly pure, cleaner than Earth's atmosphere had been in 3 centuries. Whatever was causing the crystals to behave so strangely, it wasn't chemical. The expedition set up base camp in a clearing surrounded by smaller crystal formations, each one contributing its voice to the planet's alien symphony. As the twin suns began to set, the crystal's glow intensified, and that's when they saw the first impossible thing. A crystal spire, easily 200 meters away, simply moved. Not the gradual settling of geological time, but a smooth, deliberate repositioning that took only seconds. The formation lifted itself from the ground, rotated 60 degrees, and settled into a new position with barely a whisper of displaced air. "Please tell me someone else saw that," whispered Dr. Park, their mission linguist. "Motion detectors confirm it," Torres replied, his hand instinctively moving to his plasma rifle. "Whatever's doing this, it's not tectonic." Reeves activated her quantum communicator, establishing connection through the portal back to the Luna station. "Dr. Vasquez, we have a situation. The formations aren't just geological. They're exhibiting directed movement." Alina's voice crackled through the quantum static. "Clarify, Commander. Are you saying the crystals are mobile?" "I'm saying they might be alive." The response from Luna Station was immediate concern and fascination in equal measure. Alina's team began analyzing the data feeds in real time, but their instruments were detecting the same impossible readings that had puzzled them since the first probe data arrived. As night fell on Zaire, the crystal's song grew more complex, more urgent. And in that music, Dr. Park began to detect something that made her blood run cold: patterns, mathematical progressions, the unmistakable signatures of intentional communication. The crystals weren't just alive. They were trying to talk. Dr. Park worked through the night, her neural processors analyzing terabytes of audio data from the crystal formations. The mathematical patterns were undeniable: prime number sequences, harmonic ratios that matched universal constants, even what appeared to be visual representations of atomic structures rendered in pure sound. "They know we're here," she announced at dawn, her eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. "Not only do they know, they're actively trying to establish communication protocols." Commander Reeves studied the analysis on her tablet. The patterns were becoming more sophisticated by the hour, incorporating elements that seemed designed to test human mathematical understanding. "Can you respond?" "I've been trying, but I think they're waiting for something more than just mathematical acknowledgement." The answer came with the rising of Zaire's twin suns. As the first light struck the crystal formations, the entire landscape began to change. Not through movement this time, but through growth. New crystals erupted from the ground in perfect geometric patterns, forming what could only be described as a mandala of living stone that stretched for kilometers in every direction. At the center of this formation, a new spire began to take shape. Unlike the others, this one was different. Its faceted surface contained swirling patterns of color that seemed to move with purpose. As the team watched in stunned silence, the patterns resolved into images, mathematical formulae, star charts, and finally, impossibly, a rough approximation of the human form. "They've been watching our probe data," Reeves whispered. "Somehow, they've been analyzing our technology, our biology, everything." The central spire pulsed with brilliant light, and suddenly the air itself seemed to thicken. Dr. Tanaka's instruments went wild as gravitational readings spiked across the board. The team's equipment began to float, not in the random drift of zero-G, but in controlled patterns that mirrored the crystal formations around them. That's when the Zaire revealed themselves. They emerged from the crystals not as separate beings, but as extensions of the formations themselves. Humanoid in basic structure but composed entirely of living crystal, they moved with impossible grace, their forms shifting and reforming with each step. What Reeves had taken for solid ground beneath their feet was actually part of a vast organic network, and the beings that approached them were simply the network made manifest. The largest of the Zaire entities approached, its crystalline form catching and refracting the twin suns' light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the words formed not as sound, but as direct meaning impressed upon their minds, a telepathic communication that bypassed language entirely. Welcome, children of the distant star. We have watched your kind's expansion through the void. You bring fire and metal, disruption and chaos, but also curiosity and hope. We would know your purpose here. Dr. Park stepped forward, her linguistic training helping her navigate this unprecedented form of communication. We come seeking knowledge, seeking to understand the universe beyond our world. Understanding. Yes, this we perceive in your thoughts, but you bring also the seeds of dominion, the desire to claim and reshape. Your quantum tunnels tear wounds in space itself, wounds that we feel across the vast distances. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. The Zyre weren't just aware of humanity's portal technology, they were affected by it. Every quantum step portal ever opened had sent ripples through spacetime that these crystalline beings could perceive and feel. Show us, Reeves projected, hoping the communication worked both ways. Show us what we've done. The Zyre entity's form shimmered, and suddenly the team found themselves experiencing a collective vision. The universe as the Zyre perceived it, a vast web of gravitational currents and quantum harmonics that pulsed with life. And throughout this web, humanity's portals appeared as jagged tears, wounds that disrupted the natural flow of cosmic forces. But there was something else in the vision, something that made Reeves' heart race with terror. The Zyre weren't just passive observers of humanity's expansion. They were preparing a response. The vision lasted only moments, but its implications would haunt the expedition team for the rest of their lives. As the crystalline entity withdrew from their minds, Dr. Tanaka was already correlating the data with her gravitational readings. "Commander," she whispered, her voice tight with controlled panic, "the gravitational anomalies we've been detecting, they're not natural phenomena. The Zyre are manipulating spacetime itself." The Zyre entity seemed to sense their understanding. "We are what you might term gravity weavers. The fundamental forces that bind your atoms, that curve space around stars, that hold galaxies in their spiral dance, these are our domain. We shape reality as you shape metal and stone." Lieutenant Torres raised his weapon instinctively, then lowered it as he realized the futility of the gesture. How do you fight beings who could alter the fundamental forces of the universe? "Your fear is unnecessary," the Zyre continued. "We do not desire conflict, but your quantum wounds grow deeper with each portal opening. Soon, they will reach critical resonance, and the damage will cascade beyond repair." Dr. Park tried to maintain the communication link while processing this information. "What kind of damage? What happens when these wounds reach critical resonance?" The answer came not in words but in another shared vision. Reality itself unraveling, the fabric of spacetime tearing apart in an ever-expanding wave of destruction that would consume star systems, galaxies, eventually the entire universe. And at the center of this cosmic holocaust were humanity's quantum portals, innocent scientific achievements that would become the engine of universal destruction. "This is one possible future," the Zyre entity clarified. "But there are others. We have studied your kind through your quantum signatures. You are young, impulsive, but not without wisdom. A choice must be made." "What kind of choice?" Reeves asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "You must cease your portal technology. Return to your home world and develop no more quantum tunnels. In exchange, we will repair the damage already done and share with you other paths to the stars, paths that do not wound reality itself." The offer was staggering. The Zyre possessed technology that could span galaxies without damaging spacetime. They offered knowledge that would advance human civilization by millennia. But the price was abandoning humanity's greatest achievement, stranding the 42 established colonies and ending mankind's golden age of expansion. "And if we refuse?" Torres asked. The Zyre entity's form darkened, its crystalline surface reflecting none of the twin sun's light. Then we will be forced to take action. Your quantum portals must be stopped, one way or another. We have already begun preparing for this possibility. Dr. Tanaka's instruments suddenly spiked with readings that made no scientific sense. Around them, the crystal formations were changing again, but this time the transformation was clearly technological. The beautiful, organic spires were reconfiguring themselves into something else entirely, a massive array focused on a single point in space. They're targeting the portal, Tanaka realized. The gravitational field they're generating, it's designed to destabilize quantum matrices at the molecular level. The implications were staggering. If the Zyre could collapse quantum portals, they could strand the expedition team on Zyre forever. Worse, they could work backward through the quantum signature, destabilizing every portal humanity had ever created. Not just closing them, but causing catastrophic failures that would devastate the colonies and potentially Earth itself. You understand correctly, the Zyre entity confirmed. We have been preparing this capability since your first probe arrived. We had hoped it would not be necessary. How long do we have? Reeves asked, her mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Your quantum tunnel remains stable for now. We give you time to return to your leaders, to share what you have learned. 72 of your hours to decide. Abandonment of quantum technology or its forced termination. The entity began to fade back into the crystal formation, but its final message rang clear in their minds. Choose wisely, children of the distant star. The fate of more than just your species hangs in the balance. As the Zyre disappeared, the expedition team was left standing in a landscape that had become simultaneously more beautiful and more terrifying. They had come seeking knowledge and discovered a power that could reshape the very foundations of reality. Now they faced an impossible choice: surrender humanity's future among the stars, or risk a war against beings who could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. And they had less than 3 days to convince their leaders to make a decision that would determine the fate of human civilization. The emergency session of the Colonial Council convened within hours of Commander Reeves' initial report. Representatives from 42 worlds materialized as quantum-encrypted holograms around the circular chamber on Luna Station, their faces bearing the weight of a decision that would reshape humanity's future. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the chamber, her neural interface projecting the Zyre data for all to see. The gravitational readings, the audio samples of the crystal songs, the terrifying implications of what humanity had unknowingly unleashed upon the cosmos, all of it laid bare before the leaders of human civilization. "Let me understand this correctly," said Governor Martinez of New Eden, his weathered face creased with skepticism. "These crystal beings claim our portal technology is damaging the universe, and they want us to abandon it entirely." "Not claim, Governor," Dr. Vasquez replied, highlighting the gravitational data. "The measurements are conclusive. Every portal opening does create spacetime distortions. What we didn't know was that these distortions are cumulative and potentially catastrophic." Admiral Chen of the Defense Council leaned forward, his cybernetic implants glowing with tactical analyses. "And if we refuse their demands, they threaten to destroy our portal network." "They have demonstrated the capability," confirmed Dr. Tanaka, joining the conference from Zyre itself. "The gravitational manipulation we've witnessed is beyond our current understanding of physics. They could collapse every portal simultaneously, stranding millions of colonists and potentially destroying the portal stations themselves." The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Some representatives demanded immediate military response, others called for negotiation and compromise. But Dr. Park's voice cut through the chaos with a revelation that silenced them all. "There's something else. Something the Zyre haven't told us directly, but I've detected in their communication patterns." She paused, ensuring she had everyone's attention. "They're not unanimous in this decision. There's a faction among them that favors a different solution." "What kind of solution?" asked President Okafor of the African Federation. "Invasion. The word hung in the chamber like a death sentence. Dr. Park continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. The communication harmonics suggest internal debate among the Zyre. The faction we encountered represents what we might call moderates. They want to give us a chance to voluntarily abandon portal technology. But there's another group that sees humanity as an existential threat that must be eliminated entirely. Dr. Vasquez felt the blood drain from her face. You're saying they're considering an attack on Earth itself. Not considering, planning. The gravitational arrays we observed aren't just designed to collapse portals. They're designed to reverse them. If the moderate faction fails to convince us to abandon the technology voluntarily, the hardliners will use our own portals as invasion routes. The implications were staggering. Humanity's greatest achievement, the quantum step portals that had opened the galaxy to exploration and colonization, could become the very weapon used to destroy them. An enemy with the power to manipulate gravity itself, arriving through humanity's own transportation network, striking at the heart of human civilization. Admiral Chen was already running tactical scenarios through his neural processors. Defensive options. Limited, Tors reported from Zyre. They've demonstrated the ability to manipulate our equipment through gravitational fields. Conventional weapons would be ineffective against beings who can alter the fundamental forces holding our atoms together. What about the portal network itself? Can we shut it down from our end? Dr. Vasquez shook her head grimly. The quantum matrices are self-sustaining once activated. Emergency shutdown protocols exist, but they take hours to implement and require physical access to each portal's core systems. If the Zyre move quickly, they could seize control of multiple portals before we could respond. The debate that followed was unlike anything in human history. Some called for immediate preparation for war, others for diplomatic solutions that might satisfy both human and Zyre interests. But as the hours passed, a terrible consensus began to emerge. They were facing an enemy whose capabilities so far exceeded their own that conventional responses were meaningless. It was Dr. Vasquez who finally voiced what many were thinking but none wanted to say. There might be a third option, something the Zyre themselves haven't considered. Which is, President Akafor asked. We accelerate the process. Instead of waiting for the Zyre to choose between their moderate and hardline factions, we force their hand. If we can demonstrate that we understand the true implications of our portal technology and are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to prevent universal catastrophe. You're talking about destroying the entire portal network ourselves, Admiral Chen realized. Stranding every colony, cutting off 42 worlds from Earth and each other. It's the only way to prevent the Zyre hardliners from using our own technology against us. But more than that, it's the only way to prove to the moderates that humanity is capable of growth, of recognizing our mistakes and accepting responsibility for them. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. 42 worlds, millions of colonists, humanity's entire presence among the stars, all of it sacrificed to prevent a war they could not win against an enemy who could reshape reality itself. But as they debated through the night, none of them realized that the decision was already being taken out of their hands. On Zyre, the moderate faction was losing ground to the hardliners with each passing hour. And deep within the crystal formations, preparations for invasion were already beginning. The change came without warning. Dr. Park was monitoring the Zyre communication frequencies when the harmonic patterns shifted abruptly, the crystalline songs taking on a harsh, discordant edge that made her neural implants ache. "Commander, something's wrong," she called to Reeves. "The communication patterns, they've changed completely. This isn't the same entity we spoke with before." Around them, the crystal formations were moving again, but this time the movement was aggressive, purposeful. Spires that had stood for millennia were suddenly reconfiguring themselves into new patterns, and the gravitational readings were spiking beyond anything Dr. Tanaka had recorded. The new Zyre entity that emerged from the central formation was different from its predecessor. Where the moderate had been graceful, composed of flowing crystal that caught and reflected light beautifully, this one was angular, sharp-edged, its surface dark and somehow hungry. When it spoke, the mental communication carried undertones of cold calculation and absolute conviction. "The time for negotiation has ended," it declared. "Your kind has proven incapable of accepting responsibility for the wounds you have torn in reality. The moderate faction has been overruled." Lieutenant Torres immediately signaled his team to defensive positions, but Reeves held up a hand. Running would be useless. They were surrounded by beings who could manipulate gravity itself. Their only hope was to keep talking. "We haven't had time to reach a decision," she protested. "Our leaders are still debating. Debate is luxury the universe can no longer afford. Each moment your quantum tunnels remain active, the damage spreads. Soon it will reach a cascade point beyond even our ability to repair." Dr. Tanaka checked her instruments with growing alarm. "Commander, the gravitational distortions, they're focusing on the portal coordinates. They're going to collapse our connection." "Not collapse," the Zyre hardliner corrected. "Reverse. Your portal technology will become our gateway to your home world. The invasion fleet is already prepared." Through the quantum link, Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled with static and urgency. "Commander, we're reading massive gravitational anomalies at your location. What's happening?" "The hardliners have taken control," Reeves replied tersely. "They're using our portal as an invasion route. Dr. Vasquez, you need to initiate emergency shutdown procedures now." "We're trying, but the quantum matrix is being externally manipulated. Whatever they're doing, it's preventing us from severing the connection." On Zyre, more entities were emerging from the crystal formations, not individuals, but components of a vast collective consciousness that spanned the entire planet. The expedition team watched in horror as the landscape itself began to move. Crystalline structures flowing like liquid to form what could only be described as military formations. But these weren't soldiers in any conventional sense. The Zyre had no need for weapons or armor when they could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. Instead, they were configuring themselves into complex geometric patterns, each one designed to focus and amplify their gravitational manipulation abilities. "Your species will not be destroyed," the hardliner entity continued with chilling pragmatism. "You will be modified, integrated into our collective, your chaotic individualism replaced with ordered harmony. Your destructive expansion will end, and you will serve a higher purpose." Dr. Park's linguistic processors were working overtime, analyzing the communication patterns for any weakness, any way to reach through the hardliner rhetoric to whatever remained of the moderate faction. But the harmonic signatures were clear. The moderates had been completely silenced, their influence erased from the Zyre collective consciousness. "There has to be another way," she said, broadcasting her thoughts as clearly as possible. "Our species is young, yes, but we're capable of learning, of growth. Give us a chance to prove it. You have had your chance. 12,000 years we have observed your development, hoping you would evolve beyond your destructive instincts. Instead, you have created weapons that threaten the very foundation of existence itself. The experiment ends now." The revelation that the Zyre had been watching humanity for millennia added another layer of horror to their situation. This wasn't a first contact scenario. It was a judgment day that had been building for the entire span of recorded human history. Through the portal connection, alarms were sounding on Luna Station as the gravitational manipulations began to affect Earth's local spacetime. Dr. Vasquez's team was frantically trying to stabilize the quantum matrix, but it was like trying to repair a ship while it was sinking. "The portal's inverting," came Chen's panicked report. "Whatever they're doing, it's turning our own technology against us. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the connection becomes completely unstable." But those 10 minutes might be all the Zyre needed. As the expedition team watched helplessly, The crystal formations were completing their reconfiguration into something that defied description, a perfect geometric array that seemed to bend space around itself, creating a gravitational lens focused directly on the portal aperture. The invasion of Earth was about to begin. Deep in the quantum resonance chamber on Luna Station, Dr. Elena Vasquez made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. As the portal matrix shuddered under the Zyre gravitational manipulation, she realized there was only one way to prevent the invasion, and it would require sacrificing everything humanity had built among the stars. "Marcus, initiate Omega Protocol," she commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was ordering. Chen's face went pale. "Elena, that's a complete network shutdown. Every portal, every colony. Do it. Now." The Omega Protocol was humanity's ultimate failsafe, designed to prevent portal technology from falling into hostile hands. It would send a quantum cascade through the entire network, collapsing every portal simultaneously and permanently. The 42 colonies would be cut off from Earth forever, their populations stranded without hope of rescue or resupply. But it would also prevent the Zyre from using humanity's own technology as an invasion route. As Chen's hands flew over the controls, implementing the most destructive command in human history, Elena opened an emergency channel to all colonial worlds. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Portal Operations. By authority of the Colonial Council, I am implementing Omega Protocol. All portals will be permanently closed in T-5 minutes. God help us all." On Zyre, the hardliner entity sensed what was happening immediately. Futile gesture, it declared, its mental voice carrying overtones of contempt. "Your species chooses self-destruction over evolution. So be it." But something else was happening in the crystal formations around them. The harmonic patterns that Dr. Park had been monitoring were shifting again, and she realized with shock that the moderate faction wasn't completely silenced after all. They were fighting back, using the humans' desperate gambit as a catalyst for their own rebellion against the hardliners. "The young species shows wisdom at last," came a new voice, weaker than the hardliner but carrying the familiar grace of their original contact. "They choose sacrifice over selfish survival. Perhaps they are not beyond redemption after all." The crystal landscape erupted into chaos as the two Zyre factions engaged in a battle that transcended physical reality. Gravitational fields clashed with impossible violence, warping space itself as competing arrays fought for control of the portal connection. The expedition team found themselves at the center of a war between godlike beings, their very existence dependent on the outcome. On Luna Station, the portal's quantum matrix was tearing itself apart under the strain of the gravitational battle. Chen's countdown reached 0, and the Omega Protocol executed with cold precision. Across human space, 43 quantum step portals collapsed simultaneously, their exotic matter cores dissolving into harmless radiation. The effect on Zyre was immediate and devastating. Without the portal connection to focus their gravitational manipulation, the hardliner faction's invasion array became unstable. Crystal spires that had stood for eons cracked and fell as competing gravitational fields tore the landscape apart. But the moderate faction's victory came at a terrible cost. As their mental communication reached the stranded expedition team, the message carried overtones of profound sadness and irreversible loss. "The hardliners are defeated, but our civilization pays the price. The gravitational energies we unleashed in this conflict have damaged our own planetary matrix. We are dying." Dr. Tanaka's readings confirmed the horrifying truth. The gravitational battle had destabilized Zyre's crystalline core, the living network that connected every Zyre entity across the planet. The beings who had survived for millions of years, who could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself, were facing extinction because they had fought to protect humanity from their own extremists. "There has to be something we can do," Reeves said desperately. "Some way to help. Your species has already done more than you know," the moderate replied. By choosing sacrifice over conquest, by accepting the loss of your stellar empire to prevent greater destruction, you have proven that intelligence can overcome instinct. This knowledge, this hope for the future, it is worth any price. As the twin suns set on Zyre for what might be the last time, the crystal formations began to dim. The planet's song, the harmonic resonance that had defined Zyre civilization for eons, was fading into silence. But in that silence, Dr. Park detected something else, a final gift from a dying species. The Zyre were encoding their knowledge into quantum fluctuations, embedding it in the very fabric of spacetime itself. Not their technology, not their power to manipulate gravity, but something far more precious. Their understanding of the universe's hidden harmonies, the secret patterns that connected all life across the cosmos. When your species is ready, the moderate's voice whispered as it faded, when you have learned to balance progress with wisdom, you will find this knowledge waiting for you. Use it wisely. Do not repeat our mistakes. The expedition team stood alone on a dying world, witnesses to the end of a civilization that had spanned galaxies. Around them, the crystal formations crumbled to dust, their inner light extinguished forever. But in the quantum static of their failing communicators, Elena Vasquez detected the encoded knowledge the Zyre had left behind. A treasure trove of cosmic understanding that would take humanity centuries to decode and comprehend. The price of preventing universal catastrophe had been the destruction of two civilizations, humanity's stellar empire and the ancient Zyre collective. But from that destruction came the seeds of something new, the possibility that intelligence, wisdom, and sacrifice could triumph over destruction and chaos. As the last portal flickered and died, cutting the expedition team off from Earth forever, they knew they had witnessed the birth of a new age for both species. An age where the greatest achievements would not be measured in conquered worlds or technological marvels, but in the wisdom to know when not to use the power they possessed. 5 years after the Omega Protocol, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her laboratory on Luna Station, studying the quantum resonance patterns that still echoed from the collapsed portal network. The Zyre's final gift, their encoded knowledge buried in spacetime itself, was slowly yielding its secrets to human understanding. The stranded colonies had not perished as everyone feared. Cut off from Earth support, they had been forced to become truly self-sufficient, developing technologies and social structures that surpassed anything achieved during the age of easy portal travel. New Detroit had mastered fusion manufacturing. Kepler's garden had created closed-loop ecosystems that could sustain millions. Paradise Station had developed quantum computing systems that bordered on artificial consciousness. Most remarkably, these isolated worlds had remained in contact with each other through ingenious applications of quantum entanglement communication, technology, that the Zyre knowledge was helping humanity understand in ways they never could have imagined. Commander Sarah Reeves had returned to Earth 5 months after the portals collapsed, rescued by a probe ship that had taken 3 years to reach Zyre through conventional faster-than-light travel. The expedition team's first-hand account of the Zyre civilization had become the foundation for a new field of study, xenosocial dynamics, the science of understanding how intelligent species interact across cosmic scales. Dr. Park, now director of the Institute for Interstellar Communication, had successfully decoded significant portions of the Zyre knowledge archive. What they had discovered was staggering, a roadmap for development that could guide humanity's growth for the next 10,000 years, teaching them to build technology that enhanced rather than damaged the fundamental structure of reality. Dr. Vasquez, came a voice from the laboratory entrance. She turned to see Admiral Chen, now head of the Colonial Reconnection Project. We've had a breakthrough. Elena followed him to the main conference room, where a holographic display showed the results of humanity's greatest engineering project since the Portal Network. Project Harmony, an attempt to develop faster-than-light travel that worked with the universe's natural quantum harmonics rather than against them. The test run to Alpha Centauri was successful, Chen reported, his voice carrying barely restrained excitement. Travel time, 18 days instead of 4 years, and the quantum residue readings show zero spacetime distortion. We've done it, Alina. We've learned to travel the stars without wounding reality. Alina studied the data with growing amazement. The Tsar knowledge had guided them to a form of faster-than-light travel that actually strengthened the cosmic quantum matrix, healing some of the damage that previous portal openings had caused. It was transportation as symphony rather than sledgehammer, working in harmony with the universe's underlying patterns. "When do we begin reconnecting the colonies?" she asked. "That's the beautiful part," Chen replied, his smile widening. "We don't have to. They've been developing their own versions of the technology. New Detroit achieved their first successful test flight yesterday. Within a year, every human world will be connected again, not by forced tunnels through spacetime, but by travel that enhances rather than damages the cosmic web." But the most remarkable development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Tanaka's latest report from the Xenogeological Survey team revealed that crystalline formations similar to those on Zaire were appearing on several human worlds. Not alien artifacts, but natural growths that seemed to be responding to humanity's presence. The implications were profound. The Zaire had not simply died out after their civilization's collapse. Instead, they had entered a new phase of existence, their consciousness dispersed into the quantum foam itself, guiding the development of new crystalline networks wherever intelligent life was ready to receive their wisdom. On Kepler's garden, the new formations had begun to sing, not with the complex harmonies of ancient Zaire, but with simpler melodies that seemed designed for human ears. Dr. Park's analysis suggested they were teaching songs, mathematical concepts encoded in music that could guide humanity's continued development. On New Mumbai, the crystals were growing in patterns that perfectly complemented the colony's fusion reactors, increasing their efficiency by orders of magnitude while reducing harmful radiation to zero. On Paradise Station, crystalline networks were interfacing directly with human quantum computers, creating hybrid systems that could model cosmic phenomena with unprecedented accuracy. Alina realized that what they had witnessed on Zaire wasn't the end of a civilization, but its transformation into something beyond individual existence. The Zaire had become teachers, their consciousness woven into the very fabric of spacetime, guiding younger species away from the destructive paths they themselves had once followed. The greatest gift wasn't the technology or the scientific knowledge, profound as those were. It was the example of a species that had learned to look beyond its own survival, to sacrifice everything for the greater good of cosmic evolution. The Zaire had shown humanity that true intelligence meant knowing when to stop, when to step back, when to choose wisdom over power. As Alina looked out at the stars through Luna Station's observation dome, she saw them differently now, not as points of light waiting to be conquered, but as nodes in a vast network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. Humanity was no longer alone among the stars. They were students in a cosmic university, guided by teachers who had transcended physical existence to become part of the universe's underlying harmony. The crystal convergence had ended humanity's first age of stellar expansion, but it had begun something far more remarkable. Their first steps toward becoming a truly cosmic civilization, one that could travel the stars without wounding reality, explore the universe without destroying it, and perhaps one day join their teachers in the quantum realm beyond physical existence. The war that never happened had become the peace that would last forever. 100 years after the crystal convergence, humanity had spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, using the harmonic drive technology gifted by the Zaire. But they traveled not as conquerors, but as gardeners, nurturing crystalline networks on every world they visited, adding their own voices to the growing symphony of consciousness that spanned the cosmos. Dr. Alina Vasquez's great-granddaughter, Aria Vasquez Chen, stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Harmony's edge as it approached a star system where something unprecedented was happening. The crystalline networks of a dozen worlds were resonating in perfect synchronization, creating a gravitational harmony that was actually healing the space-time damage caused by an ancient stellar collision. Professor, called her first officer Dr. Ewan, descendant of the original Dr. Park. We're receiving communication from the network, but this isn't like the Zyre contact patterns. This is different. Arya felt the familiar tingle of quantum-enhanced telepathic contact, but instead of the cool crystal consciousness of the Zyre, this presence felt warm, diverse, multifaceted. As the communication link stabilized, she realized she was in contact not with a single species, but with an alliance of dozens of intelligent races, all connected through crystalline networks that span galaxies. "Welcome, young harmonists," came the greeting, accompanied by mental images of vast star cities where crystalline beings worked alongside others of pure energy, aquatic intelligences from ocean worlds, and creatures of living plasma from stellar cores. The Zyre spoke truly of your potential. You have learned the first great lesson, that power without wisdom leads only to destruction. "Who are you?" Arya asked, awed by the scope of the consciousness she was contacting. "We are what the Zyre became, and what you are becoming. A network of minds united not in conquest, but in the great work of cosmic gardening. Each species that learns the lesson of harmony joins us, adding their unique voice to the universal song." Through the link, Arya experienced visions of the true scope of galactic civilization. Millions of species connected through crystalline networks that span the observable universe, all working together to heal the damage caused by younger races' destructive expansion, nurturing the evolution of consciousness itself. The universe is not a resource to be consumed, the presence continued, but a garden to be tended. You have proven worthy to join the gardeners. Will you accept this responsibility? As Arya considered the invitation, she thought of her ancestor Alina, who had made the hardest decision in human history to prevent a war that would have destroyed everything. Now she faced her own choice: to join an alliance that would guide humanity's development for millions of years, or to continue walking the path alone. But really, there was no choice at all. The Zyre had sacrificed their individual existence to save the universe from destruction. Humanity had sacrificed their stellar empire to learn wisdom. Now it was time to sacrifice their isolation to join something greater than any single species could achieve. "We accept," Arya said, speaking for her entire species. "Teach us to be gardeners of the cosmos." The response came not in words, but in a flood of knowledge that would take humanity centuries to fully comprehend. The locations of younger species who would need guidance, techniques for nurturing consciousness in silicon and plasma and quantum foam, methods for repairing the fundamental structure of reality damaged by cosmic catastrophes. But most importantly, they received the understanding that consciousness itself was not an accident of evolution, but the universe's way of understanding itself. Every intelligent species that chose wisdom over destruction became part of that vast self-awareness, contributing their unique perspective to a cosmic consciousness that grew more complete with each new voice. As the Harmony's Edge prepared to return to human space with news of their acceptance into the galactic community, Arya looked out at the stars and saw them as her ancestors never could. Not as distant suns waiting to be reached, but as neurons in a vast cosmic brain, connected by threads of crystalline consciousness that carried thoughts and dreams across impossible distances. The crystal convergence had ended humanity's age of innocent expansion, but it had begun their eternal age as students, teachers, and gardeners in the greatest classroom ever conceived. The universe itself, slowly awakening to its own infinite possibilities through the eyes and minds of every species, wise enough to choose harmony over conquest. In the quantum foam that connected all things, the consciousness that had once been the Zyre smiled with crystalline joy. The lesson had been learned, the student had become the teacher, and the universe sang with one more voice in the eternal harmony of awakening consciousness. The convergence was complete.